When the prophet Job lost his family, his words were, Adonai natan v'Adonai lakach, yehi shem Adonai mevarach. The Lord gave, the Lord hath taken away. Blessed be God's name. And these have to be our words as we face the loss of our son, and our husband, and our father, and our friend and relative, David Pearl. And we say, Adonai Natan, that the Lord gave us David. He enriched our world, made the world a better place. And now Adonai Lakach, and now God has taken him from our midst. But because we were so privileged to have him as part of our life and for him to touch our lives, we say thank you, God, with the words, Yehi Shem Adonai Mevarach. Blessed be God's name. This is a time in which we need comfort, so we do what Jews have done throughout the centuries. We turn to the book of Psalms, and there in the 121st Psalm it says, Esa einai el haharim me'ayin yavo Ezri me'im Adonai Yosei Shemayim va'aretz. I lift up mine eyes to the mountains. What is the source of my help? My help comes from Adonai, maker of heaven and earth. God will not let your foot give way. Your protector will not slumber. See, the protector of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. God is your guardian. God is your protection at your right hand. The sun will not strike you by day, nor the moon by night. God will guard you from all harm. Adonai yishmar tzeitcha vo'echa me'atav v'ad olam. God will guard your soul, your going and your coming, now and forever. We recite the words of the 23rd Psalm. You're welcome to join me. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Adonai ma'adam v'teda ehu ben enosh v'tachashvehu. O God, what are we that you have regard for us, and what are we that you are mindful of us? We are like a breath. Our days are as a passing shadow. We come and go like grass, which in the morning shoots up renewed, and in the evening fades and withers. You cause us to revert to dust, saying, Return, O mortal creatures. Would that we were wise, that we understood whither we are going. For when we die, we carry nothing away. Our glory does not accompany us. Mark the wholehearted, and behold the upright, they shall have peace. God, you redeem the soul of your servants, and none who trust in you shall be desolate. In the book of Ecclesiastes it is written, L'chol zaman v'la'et l'chol chefetz tachat hashamayim, et la'ledef v'et la'mut, et la'tat v'et la'akur netuyah. For everything there is a season and a time for every experience under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot what is planted, a time to tear down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to grieve and a time to dance, a time to throw stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to discard, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak. And interestingly enough, this is just one of those moments where people who are mourning want to keep silent. And yet what we know about mourning is you really talk your way through grief. So the more that you can talk and the more the family can talk, the better off they really are. So So my suggestion to all of you who come to pay a condolences call is to get the family to talk and to share their story. And if you want to be of the greatest help to them, you can help them by telling them a story. Now, I know we all worry that we're going to tell a story and what's going to happen is they're going to break down and cry. And I simply remind you that that's their job. Their job is indeed to mourn and to lament. And the best thing that you can do, because there are no magic words to take away their grief, the best thing that you can do is to just reach out and hold them and let them know that you care. So to begin this storytelling about David Pearl, I called first upon his daughter, Sarah, and asked her to share her words with us, and then David's sister, Denny, to share also with us.
Hi, everybody. So I wrote this, it's a little bit jumbled, but it's my thoughts and feelings. Forever in our hearts and souls, a fire roars and gems sparkle. We are made of love. You taught us love and loved us well. Dad, you were always generous, thoughtful, and kind. You provided your family with everything we ever needed. When we needed a shoulder to lean on or full support with our decisions in life, you were there. Both Adam and I had such a privilege of being born and raised in Nairobi, a multicultural, fascinating, beautiful country where we learned and saw a lot that shaped our unique worldview. We were taught how to respect other cultures, people of all kinds, whether wealthy or in poverty, each viewed as a person and never judged by anything. We learned through you the sense of adventure and travel. I have two specific memories that I'd like to share. And one was while we were on vacation in Thailand 9 years ago, and we stayed at a little farm in Payao. One of our family friends owned a rice farm, and one of the days we went for a ride on a motorbike and stopped at a gas station where he wanted to cover his head with a scarf because the sun was hot, and we both couldn't stop laughing because he wrapped his head like a little old lady. And I don't think I'll ever go on a motorbike again, but it was a good experience. And another one was when I was really little, in maybe first grade, and we went on a little hike behind my school. We packed pastrami sandwiches on rye with yellow mustard, all of which we had brought from here to there in duffel bags. His homemade pickles, and we walked around the woods and came to a spot where the water was, and we both carved our names onto a tree where I'm sure today still is. I think Adam will agree that we will always have a good memory of our really wonderful birthday parties when we were little. He always went all out for us and was really good about it. Or sometime he would sit on the couch late at night watching mobster movies and eating a big bowl of popcorn. We both went to really wonderful schools, always had healthcare and medicine, food in our bellies, and he opened us up to different things and different opportunities to travel to places. We all had our very special connections to him in each of our different ways. And my last is that I always felt comfortable coming to my dad when I had a problem. He helped me to understand that having a kind, soft heart isn't a bad thing and that I should be proud of it. He always supported my dreams and goals, even when I wasn't very sure of myself or didn't believe in myself. He always told us how proud he was, and we will always continue to make him proud with what we do. Thank you.
For those of you who don't know me, I am David's sister. I am the first in line of the Sibs, and he is the baby. And I wanted to share a little window on my brother from the moment I knew we were having a baby in the house till really the last moment of his life. It is both a great sorrow and yet a special privilege to be with a loved one as they take their final journey. I was blessed to feel the extreme depth of the former and understand the significance and honor of the latter. My brother David came into the world when I was 5.5 years old, a kindergartner, very excited about the prospect of a new baby. The evening my mom went into labor with David, she told me we would have a new baby by morning. I asked her how she knew that, being completely in the dark about how the whole process of birth took place. I really don't know what she said to me, but a new baby brother transformed our family from 4 to 5 members. My curiosity about this small male bundle only increased as David became a real part of my young life. I loved helping my mom bathe him and change him and dress him. And by the time he was about a year old, I would take him from his crib, place him on my lap, and holding him tight, bump down the stairs on my tushy, one step at a time. He felt just like he was my baby. Apparently, David was really quite a handful as a toddler, and our family's first home, Mom would put him in what looked like a dog harness, and then that was attached to a clothesline. So if you get the picture, he was free to run around the backyard as far as his harness would allow him, curious and full of life right from the start, and perhaps that was a window on his destiny. David had the soul of bravery and of an adventurer. He was a soldier of fortunes to speak. He found himself in places all over the world, having a facility for languages that served him well. He learned both Hebrew and Arabic as a young man living in Israel. In the late 70s, David worked for Bell Helicopter in the Iranian city of Isfahan. While living there with a Jewish Persian family, he learned to speak Farsi, which enhanced both his understanding of the culture and gave him a bump up in his paycheck as well. When the Iranian Revolution exploded and the Shah was deposed, David was in an extremely precarious position. Americans were in great danger, and hostages were being taken into the U.S. Embassy. Thankfully, he managed to elude capture, or worse, through his keen and already honed street smarts. From Iran, David traveled continuously until he landed in East Africa, the country where his heart and mind found both contentment and ultimately love when he met and married his beautiful Bari, a woman with straight-out wisdom and an enormous ability to love and care for my brother. And once again, David learned another language, Swahili. Those of you who knew David well understand that he was not always the easiest person. He could be stubborn and unbending, often argumentative, but Bari was truly his lion tamer. When they became parents with the birth of Sarah and Adam 4 years later, David's often tumultuous life and personality became one possessed by the need to love, to provide a good life, and find adventure, and this drove him. Eventually, he grew interested in the gem business, learning its complexities both by making mistakes and through the generosity of others' knowledge. Over the years, he became well respected in this field, creating customers and friendships around the world. Some years ago, I visited my brother and his family in Nairobi, Kenya. And during my stay, David, Bari, a then 14-year-old Sarah, and a 10-year-old Adam and I embarked on a 9-day safari. Our driver and guide, Rafi, drove us over dirt and often unpaved roads throughout Kenya as we observed the people and vistas I could not have imagined. We laughed often on this adventure, all the while struck by its sheer magnificence of nature and wildlife. Also, danger. At one point, 3 cheetahs jumped up on our Land Rover. With windows and roof open, the guide, Rafi, warned us to remain very quiet. But when the large cats' heads came close enough to us so we could feel their breath on our face, Sarah and Adam started screaming, and Rafi and my brother had to get the car moving quickly so that the cats would leave. I mean, they were like this close. So on our way home from that safari, David and Rafi, now very good friends, conspired to find a place that served grilled goat. Now, finding grilled goat along a roadside is not like cruising around looking for McDonald's or Pizza Hut or KFC, but Rafi knew where food-safe goat was being served, and as we pulled up, we could smell how delicious the grilling was, and we decided to stop at the Three King Butchery. The smell was just so enticing. At this roadside eatery, it would be what we would call primitive by any standard. Rough picnic tables outside, no napkins to speak of. The grill was just there, and the guys were standing and just grilling, no uniforms, no waiters or anything. Each of us was given a wooden bowl, board about this large with a great big pile of salt on one end, and then a little paper plate with 1 tomato on it. The goat was then served straight onto our wooden boards, and David showed me how to dip the meat into the salt and eat it with my fingers. His only advice to me was, stay away from the tomatoes. And the reason were he wasn't sure they were washed and cleaned, whereas the goat meat, at least they grilled off all the bacteria. Many adventures and years later, David purchased our family's home to have a comfortable place when they came to visit our family here in Cleveland. And he also purchased it to provide residency for Bari, one of the requirements she needed to become a U.S. citizen. While David continued to travel, Bari lived in Beechwood, enrolling in English classes and studying civics for her citizenship test. And never was David prouder of his wife than the day last September when she became a U.S. citizen after saying the Pledge of Allegiance at her official ceremony. Beechwood may have been his family home, but yet his real love was in Kenya, and that never left him. How do you sum up one's life in just a few words? I've only shown you a small window into my brother. Those of you who knew him can surely conjure up other parts of his worldly, generous, loving, and complex person. For me, David will always be my baby brother, the one I wanted to love and protect. There was never clearer to me than the last few weeks of his life when he fought so hard to stay with us. I can still feel his warm hand in mine at the very last moment of his life. I would like to believe that David's final journey on earth was really just a stepping stone to his next great adventure in a place unknown. David, I love you fiercely and pray that your restless soul will take you on wonderful adventures in the next world. May your memory forever be a blessing.
Barry and Sarah and Adam and Dorothy and Joey, Allah Shalom, and Denny and Shelley and nieces and nephews, Melissa and Randy and Joshua and Adam. If I were smart, I would simply say amen to that two fabulous eulogies, and we would call it a day. But I didn't learn smartness at rabbinical school. I wanted to share some of the things that I talked with the family about yesterday, and hopefully maybe some of the others who knew him might share with me a little bit of what I've leave out. As we talked yesterday, I realized that David did not do things in traditional ways. He dug into himself to find out what rare gems were deep inside of him, in which he had to mind as he went through life. So right after high school, as we heard, he left. Went off to Israel. He had that sense of wanderlust in him. And as that experience was not quite enough, he went off to the African continent. I was surprised to learn about his Iran experience when he was working for Bell Helicopter and the revolution going on, and suddenly he had to find his way out. But David always had that sense of street smarts about him. And as we heard from his sister, he could speak Farsi and other language, and so he managed to get himself out of the country. He goes to Kenya, and there he falls in love with the culture and the beauty of the country. And of course, he fell in love with Hawa, Barry, as many of you know her here, who herself was an orphan, and she was at her uncle's house, and David came to visit. And it was, as I heard, love at first sight. A love that lasted 27 years. Now, you might ask, was it coincidence that he was there and she was there? Somebody once said, coincidence is God's way of remaining anonymous. And maybe it was coincidence that while he was selling masks and spheres and shields on an import basis, that he met a man who was looking for a Tanzanite stone. Now, David, suddenly being smart enough, realized it was much easier to import Tanzanite stones in your pocket than a shield or a spear there. He also realized that it had a much greater market share and, of course, was much more lucrative. So out of this one experience, a whole new world opened to him, an exciting one that required him to travel the back roads of the world where stones are mined. But he loved it. Much like he loved nature and going on safaris and adventures, as we just heard, as he loved barbecue or that goat meat that you sought out. Didn't say anything about his raising tortoises, who used to respond to him when he came up. The turtles would come and approach him and come over to him and feed him lettuce. His listening and loving Somali music. And another part of him was that he was generous. He loved to assist others. In the field of gems, where there are many characters in it, many who are having problems and so forth, David would reach out and help them, loaning them money or just giving them help. He was a giver. Much like he gave, and we heard from Sarah how he gave to Adam and to Sarah. I think you knew, and it was a beautiful gift that he gave you, how proud he was of the two of you. We heard how you could go and trust your dad and go to him with problems and would get that sense of sound advice. And in particular, he was there as a mediator between you and your mother when you needed it. He'd smooth things over for you. You didn't talk about his being an encourager of your food endeavors that you enjoy, Sarah or Adam, in pursuing the gem business like himself. He taught you through his role modeling how to be kind and not judgmental. He taught you to respect all people and not look down on others. He taught you to be gentle and caring and to value Judaism as he valued it. He wanted you to have that American Jewish experience, so he brought you back to Cleveland every summer so that your life experiences and your education would be complete. And it became complete as you were able to get to know your grandfather Joey, Oliver Sholem, and to bond with your grandmother Dorothy, who was held in high esteem by your dad. I laughed yesterday. Dorothy says to me that, you know how she got all her gray hairs? She got them from waiting for David to call her from foreign countries and foreign places and post offices where he was suddenly able to make a call and that he would tell her he was all right. He certainly was devoted to you, Dorothy, and you to him. He adored his father Joey as well and admired that Joey had built a carpet business, but it was not the business for him. Derry, as we heard you being the oldest, the motherly one, I love that story of you schlepping him down the stairs and feeding him. And of course that was throughout your life. And Shelley, you as the middle one and the in-between one, you had a different dynamic. But the childhood love and memories are there, and they're good ones. How you and David had a good marriage. You were there for him every step along the way. You created a wonderful, beautiful home for him. You cared for his children, especially when he was on the road for long periods. And you were there for him here at the end, and you were a wonderful wife to him. And as we heard, he was really very proud of you, as not only that as you took the necessary classes to become a citizen. For David, you, and as a mother and as a family, they were all at the center of David's life. I think the thing that I heard from Edna, though, that none of you told me, was about his kisses and the various kisses that he would give, not one, but two, and on both sides, and again, and so forth. Does anybody have another story? We're a little smaller, so I can ask this kind of question. Is a story that I have missed or somebody has missed would like to share with me? First one to speak is always the toughest one. I need a friend to tell me about him. Was he as stubborn as they say?
I don't have a story, I just got something.
You gotta speak loudly, so.
When I first moved to Beechwood,
Yeah.
I was in 8th grade, and I really didn't know anybody. David became my first friend,
Yeah.
and remained friends with him ever since. And then when he moved away, I hadn't seen him for years and years and years, and then about maybe, 5-8 years ago, I happened to see him at the Shell gas station at Cedar and Green, and we kind of rejuvenated our friendship, so to speak. Hadn't seen him a long time, but he was very, very good to me as a young boy.
Yeah. But you missed out by not going to Kenya to see him.
You're right.
Somebody else? Was a friend?
I'll speak as another family member.
Okay.
I wasn't going to, but I just feel the need to say something.
Go take the microphone.
Big personality. I take after my uncle, apparently. I am Melissa. I am David's oldest niece. I'm Denny's daughter. And I had the privilege of having both a childhood and adult relationship with David. And I shared some of these words with him just within the last 2 weeks or so. But as we know, David had a very adventurous side. He also had a very sentimental side. So his heart went from hot and cold very quickly, but in a very passionate way. So as some of you know, he actually has a third child. It's a silver Corvette. I think it's from the 60s or 70s. That he keeps garaged, took really nice care of. And all the years that I would come into Cleveland as a child, I couldn't wait until I was old enough to drive this Corvette. Well, the opportunity didn't present itself until this spring. And I came up with my children and he said, "Hey, do you want to take that Corvette out for a ride?" And I said, "You're darn right I do." So we went and we took it out and we were driving through the countryside and he said, "Faster, go faster. Who cares? I'll talk to the police." So I gunned it. And then I'm thinking, what is he going to do? He's not going to get me out of a ticket. And then he told me to slow down. And as we slowed down, he said, "Hey, I want to tell you something." And I said, "Okay." And I thought this was going to be about the car. And he made a comment to me about seeing how I interact with my children since I had been there to visit, and how much he admired my parenting and wished that he had done some things a little bit differently, even though Sarah and Adam have turned out beautifully. And it was the second that we kind of just like slowly went through the country and that he shared his feelings with me. And just a minute earlier, he was telling me to go faster, go faster. And it was this very like proud adult relationship that I had with my uncle. And I think it speaks volumes to his personality with both his sides of adventure and love that seems to be the same story shared through each of the people that have spoken today. And I think that that really, speaks volumes to who he was. And I hope that's how everybody remembers him.
Thank you. Oh, we have another speaker.
I'm David's first cousin, Jeffrey, and I just wanted to share a couple of stray thoughts. First, Melissa had put a picture on Facebook the other day that touched our hearts when we saw it, of taking Easton, her eldest son, to see her grandfather's grave, Joey, and with David, and the scene was just so touching, and what you had said was so touching, and I really appreciated that. But I recall when I was home from college, I'm traveling down Cedar, in front of Cedar Center, and somebody comes up to the car while I'm at a light and starts knocking furiously on the car, and I get scared and I look over. It's David, and so gave him a ride home. But that gave me a start at the time. He was always such a loving person, and always so giving, and we thought the world of him. I know how when he was living in Kenya and he would come back here and and he would want to take some gifts back to friends in Kenya. And among the things he wanted to take were salamis, just something that you wouldn't find so easily in Kenya, but he wanted to share that with people. But that was a representation of who he was, and his love of friends and relatives, and wanting to share. And that's just some of the many thoughts I have of David.
So as we know, we have one more. Uh-oh.
Well, I'm the closest in terms of a brother-in-law. I'm not actually his brother-in-law, but being a Somali, every Somali was his brother-in-law. I met Hawa and David in Nairobi. I'm from Somalia, and naturally we became friends, especially my wife Asha and Hawa, his wife. So whenever we came to Ohio, our home was in Beechwood. Even when my wife and I were not here, our kids would come and stay in David's house. I knew him as a very unassuming person, very friendly, quiet, easy to, in a way, to become friends with. I thought he was more of an African than an American in some ways. The last time David and I spoke, we planned to go together to Somaliland, Hargeisa, where I come from. And the next thing I hear is that David was not feeling well, and things went by so fast. But my family and I will always miss him. And his family, Adam and Sarah and Hawa, will remain to be members of our family as well. There's one other thing I want to mention that has nothing to do with David. But as I was listening to the rabbi recite those verses from the Holy Book, I could see the similarities. Because we tend to focus on the differences. But Islam and Judaism have so much in common that when you read the Torah or the Quran, 90% of the teachings are more or less the same. And I wish we could focus on these similarities and follow what God and the Lord had instructed us to do. It's on a sad occasion, but I'm pleased in a different way to be part of a Jewish occasion. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Amen to that. So David's wanderlust never ceased. He has crowded pins on a map of the world for all the places he's been. This we know that David was a gem of a man who had so many facets to his personality and his journey through life, and one of them, which you, his children, told me, he always emphasized quality over quantity. And so it is that his life was not as long as we would have liked it, but it was filled with quality. So I close with a poem that spoke to me about David Pearl. Some people come into our lives and quickly go. Some move our souls to dance. They awaken us to new understandings with the passing whisper of their wisdom. Some people make the sky more beautiful to gaze upon. They stay in our lives for a while, leave footprints on our hearts, and we are never, ever the same. David Pearl left footprints upon our hearts. and left a gem in our soul that we are a much better family because of him. So we say to David, like B'Shalom, go in peace for a job well done in this world. I know there are others who might like to have spoken, but let us speak to David in these next moments of silence. For David Bryan Pearl, love that united us in life and which death cannot sever. For his companionship that we shared along life's path and which continues to the tenderness of memory. For the gifts of his heart and mind that brought us joy and happiness is now a precious remembrance. For all these and more we give our thanks to God, and may the words of our mouths and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O God, our strength and our Redeemer, and let us all say, Amen. We rise for the El Malay Rachamim. El Malay Rachamim, Shochem Bam Ramim, Hamsei Menucha Nechuna Tachet Kanfei HaShekhinah, Im Kedoshim Utaharim Kazohar Harakia Mazirim, Et Nishmat David ben Yosef Vadavor, Shahalach La'olamo. Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to David Bryan Pearl, the son of Dorothy and Joey Pearl, who has entered eternity. Bal harachamim yastirehu b'sedek hanafav lolamim v'yitzror b'tzror hachayim et nishmato. Adonai hu nachalato v'yanuach b'shalom al mishkavo v'nomar. Amen. O God of mercy, let him find refuge in your eternal presence, and let his soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is his inheritance. May he rest in peace. And let us all say, Amen. You may be seated. This concludes our service here. We will continue at the graveside, and then we will return to the residence for Shiva and Minyan at 23500 Green Lawn. The road is kind of cut up and closed at one end, I think. And the family will be receiving today until 8 o'clock, and then tomorrow from 7 until 9 o'clock. Those who would like to make a contribution in David's memory, you can do it to the David Sheldrick Wildlife Trust, and you can go on the web to find it under the sheldrickwildlifetrust.org.